Hello and welcome to the Beef Edge, the Teagasc Beef Podcast, for all your latest news, information and advice for Irish beef farmers. I'm Catherine Egan, and with the recent launch of a number of schemes by the Department of Agriculture, I'm joined by Aidan Murray, Teagasc Beef Specialist, and Michael Hennessy, Teagasc Head of Tillage, to discuss the new schemes. Michael and Aidan, you're very welcome. Michael, if we start with the Tillage Incentive Scheme, it has been welcomed by many farmers across the country. Who is the scheme targeted towards?
So really this scheme is trying to increase the amount of tillage crops in the country, but really the overall the amount of tillage and forage grown in the country. So it's aimed at all farmers. No farmer is necessarily excluded out of it. Whether you're a tillage farmer or a grassland farmer, anybody can participate in it. So what it's I suppose really what it's trying to do is it's trying to bring more ground out of grass into tillage. So there's kind of it's a two hurdle type scenario for anybody who can participate in it. And I suppose just by the way, it's €400 per hectare or €160 an acre is the payment for this. So essentially the bar is as low as this, I suppose. That essentially a grower would compare the BPS application from 2021 in comparison to 2022. And if in 2022 there is more tillage area in 2022 than in 2021, that's the first hurdle. The second hurdle, that extra area that's come into the 2022, that needs to have come from grassland. So in other words, somebody who plows up extra grassland on their farm and has more tillage on their farm in total will get this payment automatically.
That's great, Michael. I suppose when converting from grassland to tillage, where's the first place to start?
Well, I suppose first and foremost, it depends on where you are in the country. You really want to make sure whether you have the basics to hand, I suppose. Can you get seed? Can you get fertiliser? Can you get the agrochemicals that are necessary, such as weed control and that locally? And I suppose this might sound an odd one, but not necessarily in some parts of the country. Is there a local contractor to do the work for you? And maybe more crucially, a combine to actually get the thing harvested. So look, that's the starting point, and we're not too far down along the line when you kind of think about all of those. The second one then is, look, you just need to figure out, or the farmer needs to figure out, can he make money out of this? So ideally, I suppose, look, tillage isn't a half person's, there's no half measures in it, put it that way. You either have to do it full bore or you don't do it at all. Because of the money outlay that's involved in it, every crop needs to get to a reasonable minimum before you're going to start making money. So on a spring barley, for instance, it's probably going to take to go to 2.5 tons before you're going to start to make money out of it. That's the level it is. Now, whether that happens to be on your whether you're going to keep it for yourself in your own shed and feed it later on in the year, or whether the farmer is going to sell it, you still need to do that. So for that, then, I suppose where I'm coming to is you need relatively high yields. You can't do it half-arsed, basically. So when we again think about the land that the farmer might choose, look, primarily most of it's probably going to be sown to spring barley. Spring barley, of all the things it does not like low pH. So the first thing to test is, where is the pH in that ground? If it's not above 6, you really get nothing with spring barley. It needs to be closer to 6.5. If it's 6 or below, oats is probably a better bet for you. And I suppose some of the other forage crops, whether it's maize or beet, again, it wants to be closer to 6.5. I suppose just by the way, Catherine, in terms of the eligible crops that people can plant, it's barley, wheat, or oats, either winter or spring, maize and fodder beet or sugar beet. And potatoes as well. That's the other ones. So look, there's a wide variety of crops, but you really do need to think about the ground that you're putting it into.
And you've hit a lot of the pitfalls there, Michael. And I suppose some farmers have never sown a crop before. So of what you've mentioned, which of these crops might be the easiest to grow? I know you have to give it at all, but which might be easier growing depending on the soil type and location, etc.?
If your soils are reasonably good, spring barley is probably the easiest. However, if your soil is low in pH and low in P and K, oats is probably going to be the best. It'll scavenge that a little bit better, and it'll tolerate the pH that a little bit better. But look, the other kind of pitfalls I suppose I'd really point to is that I suppose two things. If you're going to plow grassland, The longer it's ploughed before you sow it, the better it is, because you have this kind of breaking down type scenario where the grassland, which is trying to, I suppose, degrade in the soil, will suck a lot of the nitrogen out of it. So where possible, all growers should do a couple of things. They should put a high enough seed rate in. So by that, in old money, if you like, about 12 stones to the acre of spring barley, or 180 kgs per hectare, you really want to be considering that as a minimum. They ideally want to be applying P and K down the spout, in other words, beside the seed, to get the best out of whatever P and K they want to put onto it. And lastly, to really consolidate that seedbed. So, where ground is, packed tight, not compacted, but packed tight in a consolidated way, you're going to create the best seedbed for that spring barley.
That's great, Michael. And I suppose, finally, farmers that have never sown a crop before, who should they contact if they're considering joining the scheme?
The easiest place to start is probably if there's a specialist tillage grower beside that farmer. They're just the easiest paper to start with. A lot of grassland farmers might be considering this, as in they might have, maybe mightn't be overly intensive in terms of running a lot of cattle. They might be able to take out 10 or 15 or 20 acres out of the system without any problem. They mightn't have the machinery, and they certainly probably don't have the expertise, because it does take a bit of expertise. For those farmers, the best opportunity may well be just to hook up with a local tillage farmer who's good at the job, so that they get that high yield and there's a chance of profitability in it for everybody. That can be done in I suppose, 2 or 3 different ways. Short-term rental, longer-term rental, that would come with a tax incentive in it, or even a kind of a share farm type scenario. So there's loads of different ways. And obviously then the other side of it is, look, if a farmer's going on their own, contact your local advisor, whether it's a Teagasc advisor or any other advisor, and maybe get a little bit of advice, certainly from the local merchant, in terms of the availability of materials, whether that's seeds or fertilizers, whatever. It's all critical that's all kind of put in place.
That's great, Michael. And as you said, the payment of $400 a hectare, and farmers will be just applying through their basic payment application form this year.
Yeah, there's no application, no other specific application, whether it's a tick box or some other application be filled out. The department will just compare last year's application with this year's application, and if you meet those couple of criteria I mentioned earlier, the farmer will get paid.
Thanks, Michael, for that update on the Tillage Incentive Scheme. Aidan, farmers that have participated in the BEEP-S previously, can you give an overview of the main tasks farmers must complete this year?
Well, basically, Catherine, it's broadly similar to what they would have done in 2020 or 2021 if they had already been in the scheme. There's one mandatory action that's required, which basically means that you weigh the suckler cow and her unweaned calf. Those calves should have been born, or eligible calves will have been born, from the 1st of July 2021 to the 30th of June this year. And the cow and calf must be weighed on the same day. And as I said, the calf must be unweaned. Obviously, there's other basic criteria that, you have to have an active herd number. You must put in a basic payment in 2022. And the other thing, I suppose, is that just because you applied in 2020 or 2021, you don't automatically roll over into 22. You must reapply to get in 2022. And of course, there may be some people that haven't been in 2020 or 21 and may go in for the first time in 2022. And that's allowable as such. But the main action is weighing the cow and calf. And it's that action that triggers the potential amount of payment that you can get from the other optional actions. And the other two optional actions are, number one, you can opt for meal feeding 4 weeks pre and 2 weeks post weaning, or you can opt for a vaccination protocol on the farm against pneumonia. And the third potential, or the second potential option, is the fecal egg testing, whereby you lift fecal samples where they're looking for rumen and liver fluke, and send it off to one of the DAFM approved labs before the 3rd of October this year, and get your results back. And again, but it's the meal feed and the vaccination are optional, as is the fecal egg sample, but it's the weigh-in, which is the mandatory action that'll sort of trigger the potential amount of payment that you can get there.
And if a farmer had previously registered the scales, will they have to re-register it again, Aidan, or what's the process?
Well, no, basically, if you've had registered a set of scales up to this, ICBF have confirmed that you won't have to re-register. It's only somebody maybe coming in or somebody that has a new scales could look to re-register. The other question is that, the application period for this will run up to the 25th of April to just before midnight. So you can apply online through your Ag Food account. You just go into Ag Food. You look for the tab down along the left hand side of the page called the Beef Sector Efficiency Programs, and it'll be listed BPS and dairy beef. And you actually go on there, confirm your interest, and submit an application. Now, because those applications will be ongoing for the next few weeks, the ICBF site where you'll record the weights, that site will actually become active now next week, on Monday of next week. But the actual herd numbers that are eligible will be filtered across to ICBF over the next few weeks as people start to apply. There's something over 2,000 farmers have applied in the last week alone to go back into the BEEP scheme. So, but you still can record your weights on the ICBF site. Even through record events, there's no issue there.
So farmers have up until the 25th of April to apply for the scheme.
Yeah, no, that's to get full payment. But there is a late application window there that if you apply after the 25th of April, you can actually put in an application up until the 20th of May. Now, the downside to that is that there's obviously a penalty incurred if you go beyond the 25th of April. And basically, if you left it until the 20th of May to apply, you basically, whatever your full payment would have been if you were on time, they'll deduct 18% off that payment because of late application. So there is a window there, and that where they basically deduct 1% for every working day after the 25th of April.
What is the rate of payment for the BPS scheme?
Well, basically, Catherine, you can get paid on up to a maximum of 100 cows for an individual herd owner, and basically for the first 10 cows and calves that are weighed, it's €50 per unit. Anything then from 11 cows and calf units up to 100 is at €40. And then again, like last year, the meal feeding and the vaccination, if you picked for that, it's €30 per eligible calf. And for the fecal egg sampling, that's €10. So if you were, for example, a maximum of 100 cows and calves eligible for that, and you went for the mandatory weigh-in, you went for, say, meal feeding, and you went for the fecal egg sampling, you're potentially looking at a payment of €8,100.
That's great, Aidan. And in relation to the dairy beef calf scheme, which is a support for farmers that are rearing calves from the dairy herd, what stock are eligible for that scheme?
Well, basically, again, it's very similar. Your application, you have to be an active herd number. You must submit a 2022 basic payment. But if you have a male calf of a dairy breed on your holding, or you have a male or a female calf of a beef breed that was born to a dairy dam, well, those animals will actually be eligible. So, if you had Frisian bull calves, for example, obviously you're ruling out Frisian heifers and stuff like that. But your Frisian bull calves, your male and female beef bred calves, your Angus's, your Herefords, your Belgian Blues, your Aubrecks, and that have come off a dairy dam, those will all be eligible as part of the scheme. And I suppose there's a few things that you must bear in mind. The calves must be at least 12 weeks old before they're actually weight recorded. And if you do record this year, both for BPS and for the dairy calf scheme, you're supposed to have the weights recorded on the ICBF database before the 1st of November. And the calves, they will accept weights from calves born after the 1st of July 2021, right the way through to calves that would be born up to midsummer. But the calves have to be at least 12 weeks old before the end of November if you're to qualify for payment. So on your farm for at least 10 days and be at least 12 weeks old at the time of weighing. You need to weigh a minimum of 5 eligible calves, and you can go up to a maximum of 40, which is an improvement on last year. It was one of those schemes last year that was undersubscribed, and so they decided to double the rate of eligible calf, or the maximum number of calves, from 20 to 40. And basically, that's hopefully we'll see a better uptake for that scheme this year. Again, the closing date for application on that scheme is the 25th of April as well, midnight on the 25th of April.
Finally, Aidan, when can farmers expect to see the genomic tags arrive on farm?
Yes, Catherine. Just in the last few days, there's been a number of questions coming in from farmers with the better weather, and them thinking about letting out stock. They would obviously like to get them tagged before they let them out. So basically, they've started to arrive on farm in the last few days, and will continue to arrive out on farms over the next few weeks, provided people have the eligible number of animals genotyped. If you don't have the eligible number for genotype tags at this stage, ICBF tend to wait until you have enough births on the farm or enough eligible animals on the farm to trigger the ordering of the tag. So for some people, it'll take longer. Anybody that has their full complement, and that the tags could arrive any time from now on.
That's great, Aidan. Thanks very much, Aidan and Michael. I think that answers a lot of questions that farmers may have. And for further information, listeners can talk to their local Teagasc advisor, and the link to additional information will be available on the podcast text.
Thank you.
That's all for this week's episode, and my thanks to Aidan and Michael for joining me on the show. You can catch up on all other shows and interviews from the Beef Edge podcast on the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie, or you can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe so you never miss a show. For all other updates from our beef programme, keep an eye on our Twitter and Facebook pages. Until next time, I'm Catherine Egan, and thanks for listening.